people in Rutland are drowning. And the mayor is like a lifeguard, but instead of going in and drowning the citizens, he's looking along the beach to see who can throw else into the riptide. It makes no sense to many of us how you take a poor community, introduce even more poor people, and somehow come out of that with an economic boom.
A 5-term mayor of an economically depressed town of Vermont. He's now blaming his re-election loss on his own highly criticized plan to bring in Syrian and Iraqi refugees into his depressed town. Christopher Louras, mayor of Rutland, Vermont, said, quote, "Though I wanted to think this was not a referendum on refugee resettlement, I continue to believe, as I've articulated, that Rutland is a microcosm of the national conversation on immigration and refugees. And ultimately, it was not an election on the issues, but an election based on emotions." Here to discuss, he's a resident of that town. He's a mayor candidate, Dr. Timothy Cook. Doctor, did he lose because of his plan to bring in refugees? And forgive me, didn't this mayor argue that this would be a boom and it would trigger an economic boom or help the economy to bring in refugees? Was that his argument?
Well, I mean, maybe that's what they teach at the Harvard Business School these days. But it didn't make a lot of sense to me, and it didn't make a lot of sense of most of the people I knew. One thing is that this is a vindication of the fact that what many of us who had opposed the program from the beginning had said, which was that a majority of the tax-paying citizens of the city opposed this program, and that most of the support was actually coming from outside the city. And our opposition to it had nothing to do with emotion. It had nothing to do with xenophobia or anything like that. It had everything to do with two things. One was accountability. I mean, the way that Chris Louras, I mean, he's a friend of mine. I've known him since we were 12. But the way he rolled this out was very unfortunate. The fact is that he had to keep it a secret because he knew that there was going to be a pushback. But the pushback was also mostly because of fiscal responsibility. We have issues in our city. We have tremendous economic issues. And in our mind, this was, as I mentioned to you 2 months ago, you can't rescue somebody if you don't have a life rope to throw out to them. And there's a point I'd really like to make, which is he says this is a microcosm of the national election in terms of the immigration. I agree with him, it's a microcosm. What happened in Rutland is not dissimilar what happened to the entire country in terms of this pushback, in terms of people in our nation feeling like they didn't have a voice, like there was no government accountability. I got a news flash for you, Liz, and your other viewers, which is that Vermont is a lot more politically conservative than you would otherwise think that it is. Now, this happens to be a picture that was taken before the election. Imagine a sign this big supporting Trump in the heart of the People's Republic of Vermont. And the reason why that is the case is that Vermont is very much like the Electoral College. For 30 years, we have been politically dominated by Burlington and Winooski and Brattleboro and these other outlying, very densely populated, very progressive communities. But the flyover country, to use the expression, most of the flyover country of Vermont, the multi-generational Vermonters are still adhering to the same fiscally responsible, moderate republicanism that we've been adhering to since Lincoln was in the White House.
You know,
so
Doctor,
this was not an anomaly.
Quickly, we only have 10 seconds left, but he is taking a shot at his opposition, the outgoing mayor, saying, you know what, he's blaming it on emotions, right?
That's what he's saying. This is, as I told you last time we were together, this is about mathematics. It's not about morality. Mathematically, we determined we could not afford this.